Hi there, I'm Win Padini. I'm a marketing systems architect, and myself and my colleagues, we've been working intensely on being able to attribute events from Facebook and Google intensely, especially since the iOS 14 updates, but even before that, because we knew this was coming. And from here, it's gonna whatever you're seeing at the moment is probably going to become more difficult as they start actually rolling out the things that they've got planned for the privacy policy updates that have to do with the browsers, with the iOS devices, and it's going to be coming out on Android. It's going to be on all of the browsers like Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Brave, Safari. So the upshot of it is that tracking is becoming more difficult. There's an emphasis on privacy and obfuscating personally identifiable information to be able to give people that right to opt out of being tracked, or to at least protect their identity. So even within that, there are things that we can do to mitigate that data loss and to be able to somewhat optimize our campaigns to be profitable. So all is not lost, and so what I'm going to do today in today's video is to be as brief as I possibly can, and then if there's a favorable response to this video, people have more questions, etc., I'll use that feedback to create a more detailed follow-on video that gives you a working template to work from, not just information, but also a GTM or Google Tag Manager container that you can use on your own projects. All we ask is that if you use it and you post it up in a public place, that at the very least, please attribute us, to let people know that we worked on this, because we've put a huge amount of time and effort into this. Okay, so the basic question was really simple. How do we take email and get it to Facebook to improve our attribution, our event attribution for our ads? In this case, we're using ConvertBox. Create a basic form. If you want to follow along, put that on some kind of test page. Okay, so these are the steps that I'm going through. We're going to be using ConvertBox for the form, and we're going to be using Google Tag Manager to manage the other bits and pieces. Okay, so in Google Tag Manager, you first of all need to enable variables. That's our first step here. Enable form variables. So if you click on configure, scroll down, go to clicks and forms, enable all of these that you see here. They'll be helpful later. Create a trigger, so go to triggers, and I've got one already made. When you're making a new one, click on new. And then where have I put this? I've got one created here called Form ConvertBox Test. Give it a meaningful name, and then from the trigger type, you're going to select form submission. Now, ideally, if we had a unique identifier on the form, something that looked like this, form ID equals unique identifier, we'd simply be able to copy that unique identifier, paste it in here, choose form ID from the drop down, and then we'd be able to detect that specific form being submitted. I don't know how to do that in ConvertBox, so if anyone knows, please let me know. I haven't been able to find it in the ConvertBox configuration. So for now, we're going to click on all forms, click save, go to tags. Now we're going to create a tag, so we're up to step 3. And here I got one made, but if you don't have, if you want to create a new one, click on new. So once again, I've got mine called Form ConvertBox Test when it finally loads. Okay, so there we have it. So before we go too far, I'm going to keep this as simple as I can. I've got a form running on this page. I'm just going to reload it so you can see what's happening. I'm going to clear all the data out of here. And there's my ConvertBox form. So I want to open up the console. On a PC, it's F12. On a Mac, I'm not sure what it is, and so I want to inspect that. So I'm inspecting the form itself. Now you can notice here what I was talking about. The form If I zoom in here, you'll see that there's no unique identifier on the form. So it's, if I've got more than one form on the page, it gets a little bit tricky. Anyway, I want now that input field. So you can see here, it's called input type equals email. Once again, there's no unique identifier on the input field. So I'm forced to first select this div here, which has a unique identifier of cb-form-group ___ control. So I'm going to copy that. So I want to first, conceptually what I'm trying to do is uniquely be able to select this thing on the page. I don't want to select just any old input field on the page. I want to select this specific one. Right, so I have to get that div first and then select the input field inside of it and then find the value of that. So that's basically what this code here does. It says, okay, look in the document, select the query with this class name, and then within that look for a tag that's an input. And then because I've got now a list of inputs, now let's say for instance you got first name, last name, email, address, etc., etc. You could have multiple input fields in that list. In this case we've only got one, so we don't really have a problem, but JavaScript still thinks that we're selecting a list of things. So you've got to tell it that we're looking for one input out of that list. In this case I've only got one, so the way to reference the first object in a list of things in JavaScript is to start with 0. So if I've only got one, then it's the 0th thing. Okay, so now I've got one input field and I want to know the value of it, which is dot value. So that's what that all means. I assign it to this variable, in this case called user email. And now what I want to do is push it into, I want to push that data into the data layer so that I can use it in the data layer, manipulate it, store it, retrieve it, do things with it. So we do that with a data layer push. Okay, and the data layer is basically like this pocket universe that Google Tag Manager can access and play with, right? It's this little fenced off section where Google Tag Manager can happily play, called the data layer. Right, now we're assigning it the data layer variable name test email. You'll see that come up in just a moment. All right. So there's one last step to figure out. So we got our trigger firing. When the form submits, it triggers a tag to display. We get the email, we push it into Google Tag Manager's data layer, but we still have to have somewhere for that data to live. So we go back to variables, and we need to go back down to these user-defined variables, click on new, and I've already created one called dlv-test email. Okay, so that's not the actual variable, that's just the kind of handle for me to play with this later. The actual data layer variable name is actually test email, right? So we saw that in that script just before with the data layer push. That's the same thing. So when you push that data into the data layer, this is now where this is going to live, and we'll see that in just a moment. Okay. Right, so we, in order to see these two windows, so you got Tag Assistant, and then you can see on my page here, you can see there's this debugger. When these run when you click on preview. So if I go up here, click on preview, if I click preview, it'll open these two windows. All right, so I'm going to now put my email in here, submit the form by clicking sign up. Now I'm going to go back to my assistant, and you can see that two actions happened. First of all, we had this event here, the form submit. So remember, we set up Google Tag Manager to detect a form submit. It's done that, it's found the event, and now we have all these tags here, these tabs rather, tags, variables, data layer. Okay, so what actually happened? So it detected a form submit, and all of this HTML and these variables here were captured. That data was captured by this action. A tag was fired, that tag that we configured called form convert box test, and I want to check the variables. Now at this stage, you'll see that the variable that I defined, DLV test email, is undefined, but that's okay. There was a follow-up to this, and this is the message that was sent. So this came through the data layer push. Right, so in this case we have data layer push variable test email, which contains the value, which is my email. So if I go down to these variables here, you can see now that this has the email, which is great. Okay, so now we have the email that's gone from the form, and it's now in Google Tag Manager, and now I can do something with it. Now I can manipulate it. So we're up to this step here. We're up to step 4 in this little list here. Just going to delete these things so it's not so confusing. Okay, so I haven't got that set up here, but I'm going to show you an example workspace with all of the setup. Okay, wealthfacilitator.com. Now we have literally dozens of variables, tags, and triggers configured to handle all of this, but I'm going to do my best to give you like a 1-minute overview of what this does without drowning you in detail, because I don't think it's going to be helpful at this point. Really, the purpose of this video is to give you a conceptual idea of how the pieces work together. The rest of it's minutia, and it's difficult minutia, don't get me wrong. I shouldn't say difficult, it's complex minutia. But what we do is we grab the email and we have to hash it, right? We have to hash it, we have to cryptographically hash it, because when we send it to Facebook or Google or any other platform, we can't be sending any uniquely identifiable information, and that's why we need to hash it. So we have a function in here that encrypts it to the standard of 256. So if you've ever installed an SSL certificate, you'll know that that's one of the more secure encryption standards. Once we have that encrypted, then we create a payload, and what we're picking up here is you see these double curly brackets here. So double curly bracket cookie dash client IP address curly bracket. These are all variables that have been defined in Google Tag Manager, and this is how you reference them. All right, so we have a script that gets the IP address. If we can get the incoming Facebook click ID, we will. If we have UTM parameters, we'll grab those as well. This is all part of this Google Tag Manager template that my colleagues and I have set up. Well, it's more my colleagues that have set this up, but I've also evolved this myself for specific use cases. I've been working on it as well pretty intensely. So IP address, user, agent, click ID, action source, event ID. So the way, if you're sending an event through to Facebook, there's 2 general ways you can do it. It's either through the front-end browser pixel, which still works with the aggregated reporting that Facebook is doing, or at least the modified version that they've rolled out since iOS 14. But even then, it's not perfect with the ad blockers, etc. So we also send the data via the conversion API. We send the data both ways with this template that you're seeing here. And the way that Facebook deals with that is it looks for a unique event ID. And so what we do here in the script is we create a unique event ID. And then when Facebook gets the 2 pieces, gets the 2 events coming in, it goes, look, there's the same event ID. They must be the same event. So it harmonizes those and deduplicates the data. So we don't worry about having doubled up attribution for leads or opt-ins or purchases, etc. Also, like I said, we hash the email, then we pull it in here. Same thing if we have an e-commerce transaction, and we have the price and we have the currency, we report those here as well. If we have content and some kind of category, we also report those as well, depending on the. Let's say you have some kind of view content event, and you want to pass through more information. So what we then do is we build a payload in JSON format, and then we send that through to Facebook's conversion API via an HTTP request. And like I said, we've got a number of tags and triggers set up to do that, and we send that through the browser, and we also send that through the Conversion API. Same information packaged a little bit differently. So that's conceptually how that works. I really didn't want to go into minutia here because I don't think that would be that valuable, and I'd make a long ass video. So let me know what you guys think, and depending on the response and that kind of thing, then it'll determine if I create that follow-on video. Also, the questions that I get will probably help shape what that video looks like, because I'll make it to kind of answer your questions. If you want to contact me, you can do if it's something that's going to help everybody, just post the message in the comments. If you have something specific for me, if you need my specific help or my colleagues' help, reach out to me via Messenger, and we'll have a conversation and see what we can do, and we will take it from there. Yeah, so expect that second video. Send me your questions, etc., and let's go.